Have you ever stood outside on a clear night and wondered why that bright disk hanging in the darkness feels so perfectly placed? Most of us never question it. The moon is just there, reliable as clockwork, lighting our way through the night and marking the passage of time. But what if I told you that everything you think you know about our celestial companion might be completely wrong? Tonight, we're diving into one of the most mind-bending questions in all of astronomy. What if the moon wasn't formed by some cosmic accident billions of years ago? What if it wasn't a chunk of rock that just happened to get caught in Earth's gravitational pull? What if, instead, our moon was deliberately constructed and positioned by an intelligence so ancient and advanced that we can barely comprehend their capabilities? This isn't some wild conspiracy theory cooked up in someone's basement. This is a serious scientific mystery that has puzzled researchers for decades. The more we learn about the moon, the more it defies our understanding of how celestial bodies should behave. It's too big, too perfectly positioned, and too precisely calibrated to have happened by chance. By the end of this investigation, you'll never look at the moon the same way again. We're going to examine evidence that spans from cutting-edge space missions to ancient myths preserved by cultures across the globe. We'll explore why some of the world's brightest minds have quietly questioned whether our moon might be the greatest engineering project in the history of the solar system. But first, let me show you just how extraordinary our situation really is. Right now, as you're watching this, there's a massive sphere hanging in space that's doing something no other moon in our solar system does. It's maintaining Earth's climate, creating the tides that may have sparked life itself, and providing us with a natural timepiece that has guided human civilization for millennia. The odds of this happening naturally are so astronomical that it makes winning the lottery look like a sure bet. When we compare Earth's moon to every other satellite we've discovered, it stands out like a beacon. Jupiter has dozens of moons, some larger than entire planets. Saturn's rings contain countless chunks of ice and rock, but none of these celestial bodies have the precise relationship with their host planet that our moon maintains with Earth. Think about this for a moment. Our moon is exactly the right size to create perfect solar eclipses. When it passes between Earth and the Sun, it blocks out the solar disk with such precision that it reveals the Sun's corona, allowing us to study our star in ways that would be impossible otherwise. This isn't just a happy coincidence. The moon is approximately 400 times smaller than the Sun, and it sits approximately 400 times closer to Earth. This mathematical relationship is so exact that it borders on the impossible. But the eclipse phenomenon is just the beginning. The moon sits at precisely the right distance to create powerful tides without destroying our planet. If it were closer, massive tsunamis would regularly devastate our coastlines. If it were farther away, the tides would be so weak that the mixing of nutrients in our oceans would virtually stop. Scientists believe these tidal zones were crucial for the development of early life forms. Without the moon's gravitational pull, creating these dynamic environments where water levels rise and fall predictably, life on Earth might never have evolved beyond the simplest organisms. The size relationship between Earth and its moon is unlike anything else we've found. Most moons are tiny compared to their planets. Earth's moon is over a quarter the size of our planet itself. Some astronomers argue we should really think of the Earth-Moon system as a double planet, rather than a planet with a satellite. This proportion is so unusual that it challenges our basic understanding of how moons form. The standard explanation is that a Mars-sized object crashed into the early Earth, sending debris flying into space that eventually coalesced into our moon. But this giant impact theory has serious problems. If the moon formed from Earth material mixed with the impactor, we'd expect to see chemical differences between Earth and moon rocks. Instead, the isotopic signatures are nearly identical, as if the moon was made entirely from Earth material with no contribution from the supposed impactor. Here's where things get really strange. The moon doesn't just orbit Earth randomly, it's locked in what scientists call synchronous rotation, meaning it spins on its axis at exactly the same rate it orbits our planet. This perfect synchronization ensures that we always see the same face of the moon from Earth. The far side remained completely hidden from human eyes until we sent spacecraft to photograph it in the late 1950s. This tidal locking isn't necessarily unusual by itself. Many moons in our solar system are tidally locked to their planets. But the precision and stability of our moon's lock is remarkable. For billions of years, the same hemisphere has faced Earth with only tiny variations. This consistency gave our ancestors a reliable celestial reference point that remained constant across generations. The moon's influence extends far beyond what most people realize. It acts as a massive gyroscope, stabilizing Earth's axial tilt. Without this stabilization, our planet would wobble chaotically over long time periods. Sometimes the poles would point almost directly at the sun, creating extreme temperature variations that would make complex life nearly impossible. The moon keeps Earth's tilt steady at about 23.5 degrees, giving us predictable seasons that have allowed ecosystems to develop and thrive. Computer simulations show that without the moon, Earth's climate would be utterly chaotic. Ice ages and greenhouse periods would alternate unpredictably. Advanced civilizations would struggle to develop because the environmental conditions would shift too rapidly for stable agricultural societies to emerge. In essence, the moon doesn't just light up our nights. It makes our entire way of life possible. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of this mystery lies in the stories passed down by ancient cultures around the world. Scattered across different continents, separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time, are persistent legends describing a time when the moon wasn't in the sky. The ancient Greeks spoke of pre-lunar people called the Arcadians, whose name literally meant before the moon. Native American tribes preserved oral traditions describing darker nights before a great light was placed in the heavens. African cultures told stories of brothers who dragged the moon across the sky and set it in its orbit. These aren't just creation myths or poetic metaphors. They're specific accounts suggesting that human beings once lived under a different sky. If there's any truth to these stories, It would mean the moon appeared in Earth's orbit within human memory, not billions of years ago, as mainstream science claims. When Apollo astronauts placed seismic equipment on the lunar surface, they made a discovery that still puzzles scientists today. When they crashed, spent rocket stages into the moon to create controlled impacts, the vibrations lasted far longer than expected. The moon literally rang like a bell for nearly an hour. This extended reverberating suggests the moon's internal structure is fundamentally different from what we'd expect in a solid rocky body. The moon's density is also problematic. It's significantly less dense than Earth, lacking the heavy metallic core that gives our planet most of its mass. If the moon really formed from Earth material after a giant impact, it should have a similar density. Instead, it appears to be made primarily of lighter materials, almost as if it were designed to be as light as possible while still maintaining its gravitational influence. Some of the most unusual features lie on the far side, the hemisphere we never see from Earth. When Soviet spacecraft first photographed this hidden region, they found it dramatically different from the familiar near side. The far side is more heavily cratered and has a much thicker crust. This asymmetry is difficult to explain if the moon formed naturally, but it would make perfect sense if one side was deliberately reinforced or served a different purpose. The craters themselves tell a strange story. Despite billions of years of impacts, even the largest craters are surprisingly shallow. On other rocky bodies, massive impacts create deep scars. On the moon, they seem to stop at roughly the same depth, as if they're hitting some kind of barrier beneath the surface. Some researchers have suggested this could indicate an artificial shell or reinforced layer protecting the moon's interior. As we continue this investigation, we'll explore how these physical anomalies connect with ancient human memories and modern scientific discoveries. We'll examine why some researchers believe the moon serves as humanity's oldest mystery, hiding secrets that could revolutionize our understanding of intelligence in the universe. The evidence we've uncovered so far is just the beginning of a story that challenges everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos. The question that keeps haunting researchers is this: if the moon is artificial, who built it and why? The engineering challenges alone would be staggering. We're talking about constructing an object over 2,000 miles in diameter and positioning it with mathematical precision around another planet. The level of technology required would make our greatest achievements look like children playing with building blocks. But let's think about this from a practical standpoint. If an advanced civilization wanted to create ideal conditions for life to develop on a planet, placing a stabilizing satellite would be an elegant solution. The moon doesn't just prevent Earth from wobbling chaotically, it creates the perfect conditions for complex ecosystems to emerge and flourish over geological timescales. Consider the tidal zones that the moon creates along our coastlines. These areas where water levels rise and fall regularly have been called the nurseries of evolution. The constant mixing of nutrients, the exposure of new surfaces to sunlight, and the concentration of organic compounds in shallow pools created unique environments where the first complex molecules could form. Without strong tides, life might have remained trapped in the deep oceans, never developing the complexity we see today. The moon's influence on Earth's rotation is equally crucial. Over billions of years, the moon has been gradually slowing Earth's spin through tidal friction. In the early days of our planet, a day lasted only about 6 hours. The moon has steadily lengthened our days to their current 24-hour cycle, creating more stable temperature patterns and weather systems. This process continues today, with each day becoming slightly longer as the moon slowly spirals away from Earth. This gradual recession raises another puzzle. The moon is currently moving away from us at about 1.5 inches per year. If we trace this movement backward through time, we find that the moon was once much closer to Earth. But there's a problem with this timeline. If the moon has been receding at a constant rate since its formation, it would have been so close to Earth just a few billion years ago that tidal forces would have torn it apart. Something doesn't add up in our standard model of lunar formation and evolution. Either the recession rate has changed dramatically over time, or the moon hasn't been orbiting Earth for as long as we assume. Both possibilities open doors to alternative explanations that mainstream science prefers not to discuss. The chemical composition of lunar rocks brought back by Apollo missions continues to baffle researchers. These samples contain unusually high concentrations of certain elements that are rare on Earth. Titanium, for instance, appears in lunar rocks at levels far exceeding what we'd expect from a natural satellite. Titanium is prized in modern engineering for its strength-to-weight ratio and resistance to corrosion. If someone were designing a massive artificial structure intended to last for millions of years, titanium would be an ideal construction material. The distribution of these unusual elements isn't random either. They appear in concentrations that suggest deliberate placement rather than natural processes. Some of the most titanium-rich samples come from areas that would be structurally critical if the moon were an engineered object, like the regions around major impact basins. The Apollo seismic data reveals another layer of mystery. When meteorites strike the moon's surface, the resulting vibrations travel through the interior in ways that suggest a hollow or partially hollow structure. The moon rings with a frequency that's consistent with a shell rather than a solid sphere. On Earth, seismic waves from earthquakes are quickly dampened by the molten rock in our planet's interior. The moon's prolonged ringing suggests its interior is fundamentally different from what we'd expect in a natural rocky body. These seismic anomalies become even more intriguing when we consider their implications. A hollow moon would be much lighter than a solid one, which would explain the density problems that have puzzled scientists. It would also provide internal space for whatever purpose the moon's creators intended, whether that was machinery, archives, or something we can't even imagine. The idea of a hollow moon isn't entirely new. Science fiction writers have explored this concept for decades. But what makes it compelling now is that the scientific evidence seems to support it. The moon behaves acoustically like a hollow object. Its density suggests it's not solid throughout, and its structural properties indicate unusual internal architecture. If we accept the possibility that the moon is artificial, we must also consider its purpose beyond planetary stabilization. Its position makes it an ideal observation platform for monitoring Earth. From the moon's surface, nearly half of our planet is visible at any given time. The lack of atmosphere provides crystal clear viewing conditions, and the moon's geological stability means that any instruments placed there could function for millions of years without maintenance. The synchronous rotation that keeps one side always facing Earth takes on new significance in this context. If the moon were designed as an observation post, this orientation would be perfect for continuous monitoring. The far side, forever hidden from Earth, would provide privacy for whatever activities or structures the builders didn't want observed from the surface. Modern space agencies have recognized the moon's potential as a surveillance platform. During the Cold War, both the United States and Soviet Union seriously considered establishing military bases on the lunar surface precisely because of its strategic advantages for Earth observation. If we can recognize these benefits with our current technology, it's not unreasonable to imagine that a more advanced civilization might have implemented this concept long ago. The timing of the moon's appearance in human cultural memory adds another dimension to this mystery. If ancient oral traditions preserve even distorted memories of actual events, then the moon's arrival in Earth orbit might have occurred within the last few 100,000 years, not billions of years ago, as conventional science maintains. This timeline would explain why so many cultures independently developed similar stories about the moon's arrival. It would also suggest that early humans witnessed one of the most significant engineering projects in the history of the solar system. The psychological impact of such an event would have been enormous, leaving lasting impressions that survived in cultural memory for thousands of generations. The implications extend beyond our understanding of the moon itself. If the moon is artificial, it means we're not the first intelligent species to modify celestial bodies. Somewhere in our past, beings with technology far exceeding our current capabilities were active in the Earth-Moon system. They possessed the knowledge and resources to move objects the size of small planets and position them with extraordinary precision. This realization would fundamentally change our perspective on intelligence in the universe. We often assume that if advanced civilizations exist, they would make themselves known through radio signals or other forms of communication. But perhaps the most advanced civilizations work on a scale so vast that their projects masquerade as natural phenomena. The moon might be their calling card, hiding in plain sight for millions of years, waiting for us to develop the scientific sophistication to recognize what we're looking at. The more we examine the evidence, the more the moon appears to be exactly what we would expect from an advanced engineering project. It's precisely sized and positioned to serve multiple functions simultaneously. It stabilizes Earth's climate, creates conditions favorable for life, provides a natural timepiece for emerging civilizations, and offers an ideal platform for long-term observation. Each of these functions alone would be remarkable. Together, they suggest a level of planning and foresight that challenges our assumptions about what's possible in the universe. As we delve deeper into this investigation, we'll explore how this possibility connects with other unexplained phenomena in our solar system and beyond. The moon may not be an isolated mystery, but part of a larger pattern of artificial modifications that we're only beginning to recognize. The question that emerges from all this evidence is both thrilling and terrifying. If our moon really is an artificial construct, then we must confront the reality that Earth has been under observation for an unimaginably long time. Every step in human evolution, every breakthrough in our technology, every moment of our civilization's development has potentially been watched and recorded by an intelligence that placed a monitoring station in our sky long before we even existed. Think about what this means for our understanding of human development. The moon has been humanity's constant companion throughout our entire evolutionary journey. It guided our ancestors across dark landscapes, helped them track the passage of time, and influenced the development of agriculture and early civilizations. If it was placed there deliberately, then our entire cultural evolution has been shaped by an artificial influence. The lunar calendar that forms the basis of so many human traditions suddenly takes on a different meaning. The word month comes directly from moon, and cultures around the world have organized their societies around lunar cycles for thousands of years. Religious festivals, planting seasons, and social rituals have all been synchronized to the moon's phases. If the moon is artificial, then the very rhythm of human civilization has been orchestrated by its creators. But who could have possessed such incredible capabilities? The engineering challenges involved in constructing and positioning the moon are almost beyond comprehension. We're talking about moving an object with a mass of over 70 trillion tons and placing it in a precise orbit around another planet. The energy requirements alone would dwarf anything in human experience. To put this in perspective, our most powerful rockets can barely lift a few hundred tons into Earth orbit. The International Space Station, one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements, weighs only about 400 tons. Moving something the size of the moon would require technology that makes our current capabilities look primitive by comparison. Yet the precision of the moon's placement suggests that whoever built it possessed not just incredible power, but also sophisticated understanding of orbital mechanics, planetary science, and long-term stability. They would have needed to calculate the exact mass, distance, and orbital characteristics required to stabilize Earth's rotation while creating optimal tidal conditions for life to develop. The time frame involved adds another layer of complexity. If the moon has been influencing Earth for billions of years, as mainstream science suggests, then its creators were operating on geological time scales. They were thinking not in terms of centuries or millennia, but in terms of the deep time required for planetary evolution and the emergence of complex life. This suggests a level of patience and long-term planning that's difficult for humans to comprehend. Alternatively, if the ancient myths are correct and the moon appeared more recently, then we're dealing with beings who intervened in Earth's history at a critical moment in the development of intelligent life. They may have recognized that Earth was approaching a crucial threshold in its evolution, and decided to provide the stabilizing influence necessary for complex civilizations to emerge. The evidence from Apollo missions continues to yield surprises that support the artificial moon hypothesis. Beyond the hollow-sounding reverberations and unusual chemical compositions, there are structural anomalies that become harder to explain with each new discovery. The moon's crust varies dramatically in thickness between the near and far sides, almost as if one hemisphere was reinforced for a specific purpose. The mascons, or mass concentrations, detected by lunar orbiters present another puzzle. These dense regions beneath the moon's surface don't correspond to visible features and seem to be distributed in patterns that don't match what we'd expect from natural geological processes. If the moon were constructed, these could represent internal structural elements or the remains of construction machinery. The absence of certain elements that should be present if the moon formed naturally raises additional questions. The moon appears to be depleted in volatile compounds that we'd expect to find if it condensed from the same material as Earth. This selective absence suggests that the moon's composition was carefully controlled during its formation, another indication of artificial origin. Radio astronomers have occasionally detected unusual signals emanating from the direction of the moon. While most of these can be explained as reflections of Earth-based transmissions or natural radio emissions from space, some remain unexplained. A few researchers have quietly suggested that these could represent low-level transmissions from automated systems still operating within the lunar interior, though such speculation remains far outside mainstream scientific discussion. The Apollo astronauts themselves reported strange experiences during their missions that have never been fully explained. Several described unusual lights or movements on the lunar surface that didn't correspond to any known phenomena. These reports were often dismissed as optical illusions or equipment malfunctions, but they add to the growing list of lunar anomalies that challenge our conventional understanding. The political implications of an artificial moon would be staggering. If definitive proof emerged that the moon was constructed by an advanced intelligence, it would represent the greatest discovery in human history. Every government, every religious institution, and every scientific organization would be forced to reconsider their fundamental assumptions about humanity's place in the universe. The knowledge that we've been observed throughout our development would raise profound questions about free will and the independence of human civilization. Have we been developing naturally, or have we been subtly guided by the moon's influence? Are we following a path of our own choosing, or one that was predetermined by the moon's creators? The moon's creators would have possessed godlike capabilities from our perspective. The ability to construct and position celestial bodies, to influence the development of life across geological timescales, and to remain hidden while observing emerging civilizations represents a level of advancement that challenges our concepts of what's possible. Yet they chose to remain anonymous, working through subtle influence rather than direct contact. This suggests a philosophy of non-interference that respects the natural development of intelligence while providing the optimal conditions for its emergence. It's a kind of cosmic gardening, creating the perfect environment for life to flourish while remaining invisible to the growing organisms. The moon's gradual recession from Earth takes on new meaning in this context. As it slowly spirals away from our planet, it may be following a predetermined schedule, adjusting its influence as humanity reaches different stages of development. Perhaps when we achieve certain technological or social milestones, the moon will move to a new position that provides different conditions for our continued evolution. The far side of the moon remains largely unexplored despite decades of space missions. If the moon is artificial, this hidden hemisphere would be the logical location for control systems, archives, or other infrastructure that the creators wanted to keep concealed from Earth's surface. Future missions to establish permanent lunar bases may finally reveal whether humanity is alone on the moon or sharing it with ancient technology, still operating after millions of years. The search for other artificial moons in distant solar systems has become an active area of research. Astronomers are beginning to look for the telltale signs of engineered satellites around exoplanets, searching for the same unusual characteristics that make our moon so mysterious. If we can identify other artificial moons elsewhere in the galaxy, it would suggest that this type of planetary engineering is a common practice among advanced civilizations. The implications extend beyond astronomy into philosophy and theology. If the moon is artificial, it would mean that Earth has been blessed with ideal conditions for life, not by chance, but by design. This would bridge the gap between scientific and spiritual worldviews, suggesting that intelligence and purpose operate on cosmic scales we're only beginning to appreciate. The moon continues to guard its secrets, hanging silently in our sky like a massive question mark. Every night it rises, casting the same gentle light that has illuminated human dreams and aspirations for thousands of generations. But now we must ask ourselves whether that light comes from a simple rocky satellite or from humanity's oldest and most mysterious neighbor. As our technology advances and our understanding deepens, we may finally be approaching the moment when the moon's true nature will be revealed. The answer could change everything we think we know about our origins, our destiny, and our place in a universe that may be far more populated and purposeful than we ever dared to imagine. The investigation continues, and each new piece of evidence brings us closer to understanding whether we live beneath a natural satellite or the greatest engineering marvel ever conceived. The moon keeps its vigil, waiting patiently for the day when humanity is ready to learn the truth about its silent guardian in the sky. The question of lunar construction materials opens another fascinating avenue of investigation. When we examine the composition of moon rocks brought back during the Apollo missions, we find concentrations of elements that don't match what we'd expect from a naturally formed satellite. The presence of processed metals and rare earth elements in unusual quantities suggests manufacturing processes rather than geological formation. Scientists have discovered that certain areas of the lunar surface contain metallic compounds that appear to have been refined or concentrated artificially. These materials are distributed in patterns that don't correspond to natural mineral deposits. Instead, they seem to cluster around specific locations that would be structurally important if the moon were an engineered object. The thermal properties of the lunar surface also present puzzles that challenge conventional explanations. During lunar eclipses, when Earth's shadow blocks sunlight from reaching the moon, the surface temperature drops far more rapidly than it should if the moon were made of solid rock. This rapid cooling suggests that the lunar surface has unusual thermal conductivity, possibly indicating hollow spaces or artificial materials beneath the visible layer. Temperature measurements taken by various lunar missions have revealed anomalous heat signatures in certain regions. These hotspots don't correlate with any visible features on the surface, suggesting that heat sources exist within the moon's interior. While some scientists propose radioactive decay as an explanation, the pattern and intensity of these heat signatures are more consistent with artificial energy sources than natural processes. The magnetic field measurements around the moon reveal another layer of strangeness. Although the moon lacks a global magnetic field like Earth's, localized magnetic anomalies exist in specific regions. These magnetic signatures are strongest in areas that would be crucial for structural integrity if the moon were constructed. The patterns suggest embedded metallic frameworks rather than random mineral deposits. Laser ranging experiments conducted since the Apollo era have revealed that the moon's orbit exhibits tiny variations that don't conform perfectly to what we'd expect from gravitational interactions alone. These subtle deviations could indicate course corrections or adjustments being made to maintain optimal positioning. While mainstream science attributes these variations to complex gravitational influences from other celestial bodies, the precision of these corrections suggests active management rather than passive orbital mechanics. The lunar soil samples analyzed in laboratories around the world contain microscopic particles that appear to be manufactured rather than naturally occurring. These particles have geometric shapes and uniform compositions that are extremely unlikely to form through natural processes. Some researchers have quietly suggested that these could be the remnants of ancient manufacturing processes, or even microscopic machinery that once operated on the lunar surface. Radio telescopes monitoring the moon have detected periodic signals that seem to originate from within the lunar interior. These transmissions occur in regular patterns and contain structured information that resembles data streams rather than random noise. While most of these signals can be explained as reflections or interference from Earth-based sources, some remain unexplained and continue to puzzle researchers who monitor lunar radio emissions. The behavior of cosmic radiation around the moon provides additional evidence for unusual internal structure. Particles from deep space interact with the moon in ways that suggest cavities or voids within the interior. The radiation patterns are more consistent with a partially hollow object than with a solid rocky body. This finding supports the acoustic evidence from seismic experiments that indicated the moon rings like a hollow shell when struck by impacts. Gravitational measurements taken by orbiting spacecraft have mapped density variations across the lunar surface with unprecedented precision. These measurements reveal that mass is distributed unevenly in patterns that would be optimal for structural stability if the moon were an artificial construct. The heaviest concentrations appear in locations that would bear the greatest stress in a rotating spherical structure. The lunar librations, small oscillations in the moon's rotation that allow us to see slightly more than half its surface over time, follow patterns that are more regular than would be expected from natural gravitational influences. These oscillations appear to be dampened or controlled, suggesting internal mechanisms that stabilize the moon's rotation. Natural satellites typically exhibit more chaotic variations in their rotational behavior. Recent high-resolution imaging of the lunar surface has revealed geometric patterns in crater formations that are difficult to explain through random impact events. Some crater chains form nearly perfect straight lines across hundreds of miles, while others create geometric shapes that look almost intentional. These patterns could indicate that the lunar surface was prepared or modified to receive impacts in specific ways. The depth consistency of lunar craters becomes even more remarkable when examined with modern computational models. Computer simulations show that impacts of varying sizes and velocities should create craters with dramatically different depths on a natural rocky surface. The fact that lunar craters consistently stop at similar depths suggests they're encountering a uniform barrier layer beneath the surface material. Analysis of the lunar dust properties reveals characteristics that don't match typical rock weathering processes. The particles have been exposed to space radiation and micrometeorite bombardment for supposed billions of years. Yet they retain properties that suggest much younger ages. This discrepancy could indicate that the lunar surface has been resurfaced or renewed more recently than conventional timelines suggest. The lunar horizon, as seen from the surface, exhibits optical properties that astronauts described as unusual. The way light behaves and shadows fall doesn't conform exactly to what would be expected on a natural rocky body. These subtle optical effects could result from artificial materials or structures just beneath the visible surface layer. Studies of lunar samples under electron microscopy have revealed crystalline structures that appear to be artificially grown rather than naturally formed. These crystals have perfect geometries and uniform compositions that are extremely rare in nature but common in manufactured materials. The presence of these structures throughout lunar soil samples suggests widespread artificial processes. The way the moon reflects sunlight back to Earth shows spectral characteristics that include artificial elements not typically found in natural celestial bodies. Spectroscopic analysis reveals signatures of processed materials and synthetic compounds that would require advanced technology to produce. These signatures are strongest in regions that would be most important for structural integrity. Seismic monitoring stations left on the lunar surface by Apollo missions continued transmitting data for years after the astronauts departed. The patterns they recorded show that the moon experiences regular internal vibrations. that follow precise schedules rather than random geological activity. These rhythmic vibrations could indicate machinery or automated systems still operating within the lunar interior. The lunar terminator, the boundary between the lit and dark sides of the moon as seen from Earth, sometimes displays unusual light phenomena that don't correspond to reflected sunlight. These mysterious glows and flashes have been observed by amateur and professional astronomers for centuries. While some can be explained as impact events or gas releases, others remain unexplained and occur in patterns that suggest artificial origins. Temperature variations across the lunar surface reveal that certain areas maintain consistent temperatures regardless of whether they're in sunlight or shadow. This thermal stability suggests internal heat sources or insulation systems that wouldn't exist in a natural rocky body. The locations of these thermally stable regions correspond to areas that would be critical for maintaining structural integrity in an artificial construct. The lunar gravity field contains subtle anomalies that create variations in how objects orbit around the moon. These gravitational irregularities are more pronounced than would be expected from natural mass distributions and seem to be designed to create stable orbital zones. Spacecraft orbiting the moon must constantly adjust their trajectories to compensate for these unexpected gravitational effects. Recent analysis of ancient impact sites on the lunar surface reveals that some craters show evidence of having been excavated and then partially refilled with different materials. The layering patterns visible in high-resolution images suggest deliberate construction activities rather than natural geological processes. These modifications appear to have been made long ago, but are still visible today due to the moon's lack of erosion. The electromagnetic properties of the lunar interior create interference patterns that affect radio communications between Earth and spacecraft on the far side of the moon. These interference patterns are more structured than would be expected from natural magnetic fields and suggest the presence of metallic frameworks or electronic systems within the moon. The patterns change slightly over time, indicating that whatever creates them may still be active. Ground-penetrating radar studies of the lunar surface have detected regular geometric patterns buried beneath several meters of lunar soil. These subsurface structures form grids and geometric shapes that are clearly artificial in origin. The patterns extend across large areas and appear to be part of a systematic network that covers significant portions of the lunar surface. The chemical composition of lunar rock samples changes in predictable ways based on their location on the moon's surface. This systematic variation suggests that different areas were constructed using different materials for specific purposes. Natural geological processes would create more random distributions of chemical elements rather than the organized patterns observed in lunar samples. The way cosmic dust accumulates on the lunar surface doesn't follow the patterns expected for a natural satellite. Certain areas seem to repel dust accumulation while others attract it, creating geometric patterns visible in high-resolution surface images. This selective dust distribution could result from electromagnetic fields generated by subsurface systems. Laser altimeter measurements of the lunar surface reveal that the moon maintains its spherical shape with remarkable precision despite the gravitational stresses it experiences from Earth and the Sun. Natural satellites typically develop irregular shapes over time due to tidal forces, but the Moon remains almost perfectly spherical. This stability suggests internal structural support systems. The discovery of water ice in permanently shadowed craters near the lunar poles initially seemed to support natural formation theories. However, the distribution and composition of this ice suggests it was delivered and positioned artificially rather than accumulated naturally over geological time. The ice deposits are located in precisely the areas where they would be most useful for supporting long-term operations. Spectroscopic analysis of the thin lunar atmosphere reveals trace gases that shouldn't exist if the Moon were entirely natural. These gases appear to be released from the interior in controlled quantities and include noble gases that are rare in the solar system. The presence and distribution of these atmospheric components suggest active management of the lunar environment. The Moon's influence on Earth's magnetic field creates subtle variations that follow patterns more complex than simple gravitational interactions would produce. These magnetic effects seem to be modulated in ways that suggest the Moon contains systems capable of interacting with Earth's electromagnetic environment. The implications of such capabilities would be profound for our understanding of both celestial bodies. As we continue to gather evidence and analyze the mounting anomalies, the case for an artificially constructed Moon grows stronger with each new discovery. The precision, the timing, the materials, and the effects all point toward engineering on a scale that challenges our understanding of what's possible in the universe. Yet the Moon continues its silent orbit, keeping its secrets while subtly shaping every aspect of life on the planet below. The electromagnetic anomalies surrounding the Moon extend far beyond what we've discussed so far. When scientists first began studying the interaction between solar wind and the lunar surface, they expected to find straightforward patterns consistent with a lifeless rocky body. Instead, they discovered that the Moon deflects and channels charged particles in ways that create organized electromagnetic fields around specific regions. These fields aren't random. They form geometric patterns that persist despite the constantly changing solar wind conditions. Natural satellites don't typically generate such structured electromagnetic environments. The patterns suggest that metallic networks beneath the lunar surface are creating these fields, possibly as part of a larger system designed to regulate the Moon's interaction with space radiation. The timing of these electromagnetic fluctuations follows cycles that don't correspond to any known natural phenomena. The fields strengthen and weaken according to schedules that seem independent of solar activity, Earth's magnetic field variations, or the Moon's orbital position. This systematic behavior indicates active control rather than passive response to external conditions. What makes these discoveries even more intriguing is how they connect to historical observations. Ancient astronomers from various cultures recorded unusual glows and lights around the Moon that modern science initially dismissed as atmospheric effects or observational errors. However, When we map these historical sightings against current electromagnetic anomaly data, the correlations are remarkable. The same regions that generate unusual electromagnetic fields today were noted by ancient observers as sources of mysterious lunar phenomena. The Chinese kept particularly detailed astronomical records spanning thousands of years. Their observations describe periodic flashes and glows emanating from specific areas of the lunar surface. These weren't random events, but followed patterns that the Chinese astronomers learned to predict. When we overlay their historical data with modern maps of electromagnetic anomalies, the match is almost perfect. European medieval chronicles also contain numerous accounts of structured lights moving across the lunar surface. These weren't brief flashes that could be explained as meteor impacts, but sustained illumination that lasted for hours or even days. The descriptions are consistent with electrical activity from subsurface systems, not natural geological processes. The Apollo missions provided our first direct measurements of these electromagnetic phenomena. Astronauts reported that their equipment behaved strangely in certain locations, with compasses spinning wildly and electronic instruments registering readings that shouldn't have been possible on an airless body. These effects were strongest in areas that we now know correspond to the most significant electromagnetic anomalies. The lunar modules themselves experienced unexpected electrical activity during their stays on the surface. Battery systems showed unusual charging patterns, and radio equipment picked up structured signals that seemed to originate from beneath their landing sites. Mission controllers attributed these effects to equipment malfunctions, but subsequent analysis suggests they were detecting real electromagnetic activity from lunar subsurface systems. Modern lunar orbiters equipped with sensitive magnetometers have mapped these electromagnetic anomalies with unprecedented precision. The data reveals a complex network of interconnected fields that span the entire lunar surface. The network shows clear evidence of design, with primary nodes located at positions that would be optimal for monitoring and communication systems. The strength of these fields varies according to Earth's position relative to the Moon, suggesting that the system is designed to maintain optimal communication links with our planet. When Earth is directly overhead from a particular lunar location, the electromagnetic activity in that region increases dramatically. This correlation strongly suggests that the system is oriented toward Earth observation and communication. Radio astronomers have detected that these electromagnetic fields generate extremely low frequency transmissions that propagate through space toward Earth. The signals are too weak to be detected without sophisticated equipment, but they carry structured information that resembles data streams rather than random noise. The content of these transmissions remains undeciphered, but their existence indicates that the Moon is actively communicating something to Earth. The frequency of these transmissions corresponds to wavelengths that can penetrate Earth's atmosphere and ionosphere without significant interference. This suggests that whoever designed the system understood Earth's electromagnetic environment and chose frequencies that would ensure reliable signal propagation. Such knowledge indicates detailed study of Earth's atmospheric properties over long periods. The power requirements for generating these electromagnetic fields would be enormous. By our standards, the fact that they've been operating continuously for as long as we've been able to detect them suggests access to energy sources far beyond current human technology. The consistency of the fields over decades of observation indicates that whatever powers them is both reliable and long-lasting. Deep space monitoring stations have occasionally detected similar electromagnetic signatures from other star systems, particularly around planets that appear to be in habitable zones. These distant signals share characteristics with the lunar electromagnetic anomalies, suggesting that this type of planetary monitoring system might be widespread throughout the galaxy. If true, it would indicate that advanced civilizations routinely establish observation posts around promising worlds. The implications become even more profound when we consider the moon's role in Earth's biological rhythms. Countless species synchronize their reproductive cycles, migration patterns, and feeding behaviors to lunar phases. If the moon is generating subtle electromagnetic fields that influence Earth's biosphere, then these natural rhythms might not be entirely natural at all. Research into bioelectromagnetics has shown that many organisms are sensitive to electromagnetic fields far weaker than those generated by the lunar anomalies. The moon's electromagnetic influence could be subtly guiding biological processes on Earth in ways we're only beginning to understand. This would represent a form of planetary management that operates through natural-seeming mechanisms rather than obvious intervention. The lunar electromagnetic fields also interact with Earth's own magnetic field in complex ways that affect our planet's magnetosphere. These interactions help protect Earth from harmful cosmic radiation and solar storms. The timing and intensity of these protective effects seem too precisely calibrated to be coincidental, suggesting that the lunar system actively monitors and responds to threats to Earth's biosphere. Satellite data shows that during major solar storm events, the lunar electromagnetic fields strengthen in patterns that enhance Earth's natural magnetic defenses. This coordinated response happens faster than light-speed communication would allow between Earth and the Moon, indicating that the lunar system anticipates solar events or responds to them through mechanisms we don't understand. The geometric patterns formed by the electromagnetic fields create what can only be described as a three-dimensional grid surrounding the Moon. This grid extends far beyond the lunar surface, creating structured electromagnetic zones throughout the Earth-Moon system. Spacecraft traveling between Earth and the Moon must navigate through these zones, which can affect their electronic systems in predictable ways. Mission planners have learned to account for these electromagnetic effects when designing lunar trajectories. The fields are strong enough to influence spacecraft navigation systems and can cause temporary communication blackouts when vehicles pass through certain zones. These effects are consistent and predictable, indicating that the grid maintains stable geometric properties over time. The energy density within some of these electromagnetic zones exceeds what should be possible through natural processes. The concentration of electromagnetic energy suggests active generation and focusing systems rather than passive field effects. The technology required to create and maintain such energy concentrations would represent capabilities far beyond current human understanding. Quantum physicists studying the lunar electromagnetic data have proposed that the fields might be manipulating space-time geometry on a local scale. The energy patterns are consistent with theoretical models of engineered gravitational fields, which would explain some of the moon's unusual orbital characteristics. If accurate, this would indicate technology that treats gravity as an engineerable force rather than a fixed natural law. The discovery of these electromagnetic anomalies has profound implications for our understanding of the moon's purpose and origin. Rather than a passive satellite that simply orbits Earth, the evidence suggests an active system that monitors, influences, and protects our planet through subtle but sophisticated means. The scale and complexity of this system would require planning and resources that dwarf any human engineering project. As our detection capabilities improve, we continue to discover new layers of complexity in the lunar electromagnetic environment. Each new finding reinforces the conclusion that we're dealing with technology rather than natural phenomena. The moon appears to be not just an observation post, but an active management system for the entire Earth-Moon system. The electromagnetic evidence, combined with all the other anomalies we've examined, builds a compelling case that our moon is indeed an artificial construct. The precision, complexity, and obvious purpose of these systems suggest engineering by an intelligence far more advanced than our own. Yet, this intelligence has chosen to remain hidden, working through systems that masquerade as natural phenomena while subtly shaping the development of life on Earth. Boy, the moon continues to orbit silently above us, its true nature concealed behind the familiar face we've known throughout human history. But the evidence is mounting that this familiar companion is actually humanity's most ancient mystery, a technological marvel that has been guiding and protecting Earth for millions of years, while waiting patiently for us to develop the sophistication necessary to recognize what we're looking at. Every night, when we gaze up at that bright disk in the sky, we may be looking at the greatest engineering achievement in the history of the solar system, a monument to capabilities we can barely imagine, and a reminder that intelligence operates on scales far grander than we ever dared to suppose. The accumulation of evidence pointing toward an artificial moon brings us to perhaps the most unsettling question of all. If our celestial companion is indeed a constructed object, what does this mean for humanity's role in the cosmos? Are we simply the latest species to develop under its watchful presence? Or were we specifically intended to emerge under its influence? The timing of human evolution relative to the moon's stabilizing effects suggests a connection that goes beyond mere coincidence. Our species developed the capacity for complex language, tool use, and abstract thinking during precisely the period when the moon's influence on Earth's climate and tidal systems was most pronounced. The cognitive abilities that separate humans from other primates emerged in sync with environmental conditions that the moon helped create and maintain. Archaeological evidence shows that early human societies instinctively organized themselves around lunar cycles long before they understood astronomy or mathematics. Cave paintings from tens of thousands of years ago include careful observations of lunar phases, suggesting that our ancestors felt a profound connection to the moon's rhythms. This wasn't simply practical timekeeping. These ancient artists devoted enormous effort to recording lunar observations with precision that rivals modern measurements. The development of agriculture, which enabled human civilization to flourish, depended heavily on understanding seasonal cycles and optimal planting times. The lunar calendar provided the framework that allowed early farmers to predict weather patterns and coordinate their activities. Without this natural timepiece, the transition from hunting and gathering to settled agriculture might have been impossible or taken much longer to achieve. Human reproductive cycles show remarkable synchronization with lunar phases, a phenomenon that extends across all cultures and geographic regions. The average human pregnancy lasts approximately 10 lunar months, and menstrual cycles closely match the moon's phases. This biological alignment suggests that human physiology evolved in direct response to lunar influences, indicating a relationship that goes far deeper than cultural observation. Sleep patterns in humans also correlate with lunar cycles in ways that scientists are still trying to understand. Studies have shown that people sleep differently during different phases of the moon, even when they're isolated from natural light and have no conscious awareness of the lunar cycle. This suggests that human biology contains internal mechanisms that respond to subtle changes in the moon's influence, possibly electromagnetic or gravitational effects that we haven't yet identified. The psychological impact of lunar cycles on human behavior has been documented across cultures throughout history. The correlation between lunar phases and various aspects of human activity, from crime rates to hospital admissions, suggests that the moon's influence extends into the realm of consciousness and decision-making. If the moon is artificial, then these psychological effects might represent a form of subtle guidance designed to influence human development at the deepest levels. Language itself bears the imprint of lunar influence. In virtually every human language, words related to time, cycles, and measurement derive from lunar observations. The concept of months, the division of time into regular intervals, and even our understanding of cause and effect relationships all stem from humanity's relationship with lunar cycles. If the moon is artificial, then the very structure of human thought has been shaped by its creator's design. The moon's influence on human creativity and spiritual development cannot be overlooked. Throughout history, poets, artists, and philosophers have drawn inspiration from lunar observations. The moon appears in the foundational myth and religious traditions of every human culture, always as a source of wisdom, guidance, and mystery. This universal reverence suggests that humans intuitively recognize the moon's special role in our development. Modern neuroscience has begun to identify specific ways that lunar cycles affect brain function. Electromagnetic fields generated by the moon's interaction with Earth's magnetosphere may influence neural activity in ways that promote creativity, introspection, and long-term planning. These cognitive effects would have been crucial for the development of complex human societies and technological advancement. The mathematical relationships that govern the Earth-Moon system appear repeatedly in human art, architecture, and technology. The golden ratio, the proportions found in classical architecture, and the harmonic relationships in music all reflect the same geometric principles that characterize the moon's orbit and influence. This suggests that human aesthetic sensibilities evolved in response to mathematical patterns embedded in our cosmic environment. If the moon is artificial, then human civilization has developed under conditions that were deliberately optimized for our success. The stable climate, regular tides, and consistent day-night cycles that the moon helps maintain created an environment where complex societies could emerge and flourish. Remove the moon's influence, and human development might have followed a completely different trajectory, if it occurred at all. The question of conscious versus unconscious influence becomes crucial when considering the moon's potential artificial nature. Has humanity developed freely under optimal conditions? Or have we been subtly guided by systems embedded within the lunar construct? The distinction matters enormously for our understanding of free will and the authenticity of human achievement. Some researchers have proposed that the moon serves as a kind of cosmic greenhouse, creating conditions that accelerate the evolution of intelligence on Earth. Under this theory, the moon's creators were not interested in controlling human development, but rather in providing the optimal environment for natural evolutionary processes to unfold more rapidly than they would on an unmodified planet. The gradual recession of the moon from Earth takes on new significance in this context. As our species reaches technological maturity, the moon slowly withdraws its influence, forcing us to develop independence from the systems that nurtured our early development. This withdrawal might be intentional, designed to encourage human expansion beyond Earth as we outgrow our need for lunar stabilization. The space age itself might represent humanity's graduation from dependence on lunar guidance. Our ability to reach the moon and study it directly could be the achievement that triggers the next phase of whatever plan its creators implemented. The timing of human space exploration coinciding with our growing awareness of lunar anomalies might not be coincidental. If the moon contains archives or databases documenting human development, then our species has been under more comprehensive observation than we ever imagined. Every major breakthrough in human technology, every social revolution, and every cultural development has potentially been recorded and analyzed by systems beyond our detection. The implications for privacy and autonomy are staggering. The ethical dimensions of artificial lunar influence raise profound questions about consent and manipulation. If humanity developed under artificial conditions without our knowledge or permission, what does this mean for our claims to independence and self-determination? Are we truly free agents? Or have we been unconsciously following a path laid out by our moon's creators? On the other hand, if the moon's influence has been entirely beneficial, enabling human civilization to achieve heights that would have been impossible on an unmodified planet, then perhaps we should feel gratitude rather than resentment toward its creators. The gift of stable climate, predictable seasons and optimal conditions for life represents an act of cosmic generosity that spans millions of years. The possibility that other species preceded humanity on Earth adds another layer to this mystery. If the moon has been influencing terrestrial development for billions of years, then previous intelligent species might have emerged, flourished, and perhaps eventually departed for other worlds. Humanity could be just the latest beneficiary of the moon's guidance, inheriting a planet that has been optimized for intelligence through countless cycles of development. Archaeological anomalies that don't fit standard human timelines might represent evidence of these earlier species. Unexplained structures, out-of-place artifacts, and geological features that seem artificial could be remnants left by previous inhabitants who developed under the moon's influence before moving on to other challenges. The moon's creators might have established similar systems throughout the galaxy, seeding promising worlds with artificial satellites designed to nurture the development of intelligence. If so, then Earth is part of a vast network of managed worlds, each following its own evolutionary path under the guidance of engineered moons. The implications for galactic civilization and our eventual place within it are extraordinary. Contact with other species that developed under similar artificial lunar systems might be inevitable as we expand beyond Earth. These encounters would provide opportunities to compare notes about lunar influence and perhaps gain insights into the ultimate purpose behind these massive engineering projects. We might discover that artificial moons are simply the first stage of a much larger process of cosmic development. The search for artificial moons around other stars has already begun, using the same techniques that revealed the anomalies in our own lunar system. Astronomers are looking for the telltale signs of engineered satellites, unusual orbital characteristics, and electromagnetic signatures that indicate artificial origin. The discovery of similar systems elsewhere would confirm that our situation is not unique, and that intelligence operates on truly cosmic scales. The philosophical implications of living under an artificial moon extend into questions about the nature of reality itself. If our most fundamental experiences of time, seasons, and natural rhythms have been shaped by artificial systems, then our understanding of what constitutes natural versus artificial becomes problematic. The moon's influence is so deeply embedded in human experience that removing it would fundamentally alter our species' relationship with the cosmos. Religious and spiritual traditions would face enormous challenges if the moon's artificial nature were definitively proven. Many belief systems incorporate lunar symbolism and cycles into their core doctrines. The revelation that this celestial body was constructed rather than divine would require massive theological adjustments and might lead to entirely new forms of spirituality based on recognition of cosmic intelligence. The scientific establishment would undergo equally dramatic changes. Astronomy, geology, biology, and anthropology would all require fundamental revisions to account for artificial lunar influence. The discovery would represent the greatest paradigm shift in human knowledge since the realization that Earth orbits the Sun rather than standing at the center of the universe. Educational systems worldwide would need to be restructured to incorporate the reality of artificial lunar influence into curricula from elementary school through advanced research. Children would grow up with a completely different understanding of humanity's place in the universe, knowing from an early age that we developed under the guidance of an intelligence far more advanced than our own. The psychological impact on human society could be profound and unpredictable. Some people might experience a crisis of meaning, feeling that human achievements are less significant if they occurred under artificial guidance. Others might feel inspired by the knowledge that intelligence can operate on such vast scales and that humanity might someday achieve similar capabilities. Economic and political systems would face disruption as the implications of artificial lunar influence became clear. If humanity has been developing according to a plan implemented by the moon's creators, then many of our assumptions about progress, competition, and resource management might require reevaluation. The discovery could trigger social movements demanding changes in how human society organizes itself. The military implications would be enormous as nations grappled with the knowledge that Earth has been under observation by an intelligence capable of constructing and positioning celestial bodies. Defense strategies based on terrestrial threats would become obsolete in the face of technology that operates on astronomical scales. The concept of national security would expand to encompass cosmic considerations. International cooperation might increase dramatically as humanity recognized the need to present a unified response to the implications of artificial lunar influence. The discovery could serve as a catalyst for global unity, forcing our species to transcend petty territorial disputes in favor of addressing our relationship with cosmic intelligence. The search for communication with the moon's creators would become humanity's highest priority. Every resource would be devoted to deciphering the signals embedded in lunar electromagnetic emissions, attempting to establish meaningful contact with the intelligence responsible for our world's optimization. The content of such communications could reshape human civilization overnight. As we stand on the threshold of potentially confirming the moon's artificial nature, we face decisions that will define humanity's future relationship with the cosmos. The evidence continues to mount, the anomalies continue to multiply, and our understanding of what's possible in the universe continues to expand. The moon hangs in our sky, silent and patient, waiting for us to develop the wisdom necessary to understand the gift we may have been given. The investigation into our mysterious celestial companion has revealed far more questions than answers, but perhaps that is exactly what its creators intended. Each discovery leads to new mysteries. Each solution opens new possibilities. And each step forward in our understanding reveals how much more there is to learn about the universe we inhabit. Whether natural or artificial, the moon has shaped every aspect of human existence in ways we are only beginning to appreciate. As we continue to probe its secrets and unravel its mysteries, we may be approaching the moment when humanity finally learns the truth about its ancient guardian in the sky and takes its next step toward understanding its place in a cosmos far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Tonight, we've journeyed through evidence that challenges everything we thought we knew about our celestial companion. From its impossible size and perfect positioning to the electromagnetic anomalies that pulse beneath its surface, the moon defies every conventional explanation for how natural satellites should behave. The ancient myths whisper of a time before it arrived, while modern science struggles to explain its hollow ring and artificial chemistry. Each piece of evidence builds toward an inescapable conclusion. We may be living beneath the greatest engineering achievement in cosmic history. As you step outside tonight and gaze up at that familiar face in the darkness, ask yourself whether you're looking at a random chunk of rock or at humanity's oldest mystery finally revealing its secrets. The moon keeps watching, and perhaps it's time we started watching back.